welcome to Money Matters, where your money matters to us. I'm your host for today's show, and we're going to show today. My co-host is Jim Butler from Wealth Enhancement. Welcome, Jim, to the show.
Thank you, Tami. Good to see you.
It's great to see you too. So you're in an interesting spot with all our market volatility. What's going on?
Well, we like to not admit that it's volatility that we live in, but what goes up will come down, and things have a tendency to revert to the mean, to coin a phrase. And even though we, as you know, we don't like to date our shows, but coming off another strong year in 2025, some obvious questions have to do with, so what does the future landscape look like? And before I attempt to answer that part of the question, as we look back in 2025, U.S. Equity markets had another strong year, making it 3 years in a row. But really, the shining star were the international markets. So between emerging markets and the major developed countries, both ended the year in excess of 30%. On an annual basis. So, will that carry into the first part of this year and into 2026? And the answer is yes, but hopefully not at the same pace, because again, what we'd like to see is a little more stability and stabilization of returns. But one thing that is always interesting to those of us who follow longer range statistics is, even though recently, like the past 12 to 18 months or so, international markets have done well, the U.S. market, between larger companies to smaller companies, Tami, still are the place to provide greater long-term returns. So, you don't have to look much beyond the Mag 7, even though they didn't necessarily have the strongest year in 2025. Certainly with the advent of artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, technology that continues to be developed in so many different areas, there's still a lot of anticipation that is also going to be driven by fairly favorable, monetary policy, with interest rates probably coming down, at least stabilizing, if not ratcheting down, in the first half of 2026. So, fairly good outlook entering into 2026, at least from a longer range standpoint.
Well, Jim, it's so interesting to me that you said that international stocks were up. With all the volatility that's going on internationally, why do you think that was?
Well, I think you tend to see it mostly in developed countries. Even though emerging markets have done well, it's going to be more pockets of emerging markets, and that could include China and India that do well for shorter periods. So it's almost like they have a burst of growth, and then for the full year they end up being above average. But I think, Tami, again, to keep it simple, and the way we look at it is, dollars tend to chase attractive valuations. And with the U.S. markets performing so well, again, for the third year in a row in 2025, investors are simply looking for more attractive valuations. And you find that more in international markets. And I think that's a big part of why we experience that.
Okay, that makes sense. More attractive valuations.
Yes. Yeah. And that may play into your area of expertise in the mergers and acquisitions world. What have you seen recently, and how does that look going forward?
Sure. Well, in 2025, the first half of 2025 for the M&A middle market, lower middle market space, there was not a lot of activity. People were still really getting adjusted to the new administration. But the second half of 2025 was very active, although we saw the lower middle market initially more active than the middle market. 2026, because there's $4 trillion of private equity dry powder on the sidelines needing to be invested, and another 2 trillion of corporate money needing to be deployed in investment. We are very, very, very active, at least 5 times more active than we were even in 2024. So it's a gangbuster year. And again, it's pent up demand, both from all the money sitting on the sidelines. And then also it's the baby boomers getting older. Every year we get older, unfortunately. And the baby boomer generation is kind of aging out as far as leading companies, and there's going to be a continued great transition of wealth, generational wealth. And a lot of the children of baby boomers have their own opinions and ideas as to how they should make their money. And it's usually not, or hasn't been, as frequent to be in the family business. So a lot of family businesses being sold in the next 1 to 5 years. That's for sure.
You know, you hear a lot about private equity seeking new horizon and new areas to invest in. What would you say are their primary objectives when they look at opportunities in the areas that you're talking about? Certainly they have certain criteria that has to be met in order for them to invest their time and energy.
Sure. And ironically, Jim, you don't know this since this is our first show together, but I've been in private equity for the last 30 years. And I'm only new to investment banking in the last 2 years. So the private equity guys in the middle market and lower middle market are looking for platform acquisitions. So if you think about the need to build critical mass, it's much easier to build it by making acquisitions than by growing revenue organically. And so a lot of private equity firms have an idea of, I'd like to be in the industrial space, and let me go make 5 acquisitions in the industrial space. I need to find one company that's going to be my platform company that has a great management team, and I'm going to add on, bolt on acquisitions in other geographic markets. And in fact, to your point about the international markets, the valuations being attractive, we have seen a shift from more sell side work, so more companies wanting to be sold, to a shift to buy side, a really healthy buy side, in the sense that international companies are coming into the US to make acquisitions. And so we've really seen an uptick of that. And again, it has to do in part because there are a lot of businesses that are owned by baby boomers that do want to be sold in the middle market and lower middle market space. And there's also a sense, because the US economy is strong, and also because there's increased tariffs and supply chain issues, it's better to own in the US than stay outside the US and think about importing or exporting, as the case may be.
That's interesting. So you had mentioned tariffs, and while the noise level on tariffs, as we know, really ratcheted up to the next level about 12 months ago, is early the first quarter of 2025. And really ever since then, it has not left the headlines, and it caused for concern with certain investors. But
Right.
you do not see that as a major barrier in your activity?
Well, again, tariffs are causing international companies to set up shop in the US to avoid tariffs. And that's the strategy. But I think we have to take time now for a question from the audience. Otherwise,
Okay.
we'll be sitting here talking all day, Jim. You and I can entertain each other. So we do have a question from Grace Lewis from Philadelphia. I have a diversified portfolio, but no crypto. Should I add some? And here's the big question. And is it safe? Jim, that's for you, not me.
Well, just like we could continue talking about the M&A space and market activity for the next couple hours, the same thing in the crypto world. And I would say from a diversification standpoint, it could make sense depending on what your expectations were, but without an allocation into crypto, it would, at least my suggestion as an advisor would be, smaller percentage until, Grace got a little more comfortable. Ways that you can do that, of course, you can go into direct purchase of major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum. Those are the two major ones. And then you can use a crypto exchange. More popular one is called Coinbase. And then there are some ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are like index funds, which is a much more diversified way of gaining access to the cryptocurrencies. So iShares Bitcoin Trust is one, Fidelity, Wise, Origin Bitcoin, they have one, in Grayscale as well. The easiest way to find those is if you just go to a search and put in diversified crypto investments, and you'll get a whole list of them. In fact, I did it prior to the show and have more information in that area than you can appreciate. So there's a lot of choices, and I would think if you're more interested in diversification, that something like an ETF approach would be a little bit safer than owning say Bitcoin directly, which is going to have some volatility to it.
Well, I guess the best thing I ever heard about crypto, Jim, was that it's like religion. You're either a believer or you're not. And certainly because it's a nascent market, you do have to have a high risk tolerance because of the volatility.
I can't disagree. Well stated, Tami.
So now if you're in our audience and you'd like to write in a question, here's how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Jim, now we're going to invite our guest, Dr. Essam Hamza. He's not only a medical doctor, but he's also a serial entrepreneur, and he's on our show today to talk about his latest venture, which is in a very popular space, AI and healthcare. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So how did you ever get into the AI space as a doctor, a medical doctor?
You know what? I've ever since going into medical school, and even before then, I've always been into technology. And going into medical school, I said, how are we going to be able to continue to grow and sustain and be able to provide better care as the patient population is aging and the costs are going up, and everybody's complaining about costs and poor care and errors and issues. And so it started even then, and initially with things like the electronic medical records, and now more towards other digital tools like AI. So it's always been a passion of mine, and kind of went from the first company that I started to now this one that we can talk about.
And sorry, Jim, your company, Rocket Doctor, what is it, and how did you ever think about founding it?
Yeah, so Rocket Doctor AI, I'm not the founder of this company. I came in as the CEO about 2 years ago. The first company I founded was called CloudMD, and that company I grew where it provided healthcare digital tools to doctors and so on before COVID, and then with COVID, it really exploded. But in about 2 years ago, I was looking for my next opportunity because I had left that last company about 4 years ago, and wanted to look at the next opportunity. And I was blown away with the Rocket Doctor platform. It was called the Global Iron Medicine. They were able.
Uh-oh. Well, Jim, it seems like the camera froze for our doctor. So what are your thoughts about AI, Jim, and the currencies that are trading in that space, or I should say the stocks that are trading in that space?
Well, I would have to admit, I don't know specific companies other than the major players, that are in AI overall, Tami. But it would be interesting to hear, Essam's comments about which companies in particular. And another thought that came to mind as the two of you were chatting is what are some of the hurdles that he sees in the healthcare profession with the adoption of AI? Because we see it in everyday life, and kind of like the crypto comment that you shared, you're either a believer or you're not. And certainly there are people who are arms wide open to the advancement of AI, and those that are resisting it. And I'm sure in healthcare, they are faced with the same challenges.
Right.
And
it all depends what the AI is doing, right? If the AI is being used to come up with some, maybe some better novel research findings, or to come up with some drug development, versus is the AI operating on me? I certainly wouldn't want, a non-real person operating on me. I mean, I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. I think we're not there yet. Probably we're just talking about using AI to make the healthcare field more efficient, in the sense of all the medical codes. There's thousands of medical codes that are constantly changing by an organization called ODG, and keeping up with how you code operations and code drugs and code treatments so that you can get reimbursed is a major thing. So AI to do that would certainly seem to help doctors and physician practices.
Yeah, and those are the more repetitive tasks
Right.
that technology can overtake, and in fact allow practitioners to be more productive and more efficient in their day-to-day. But I fully agree with you. Right now, I cannot imagine getting into a driverless car yet. I'm not going to say never, because never is a long time, hopefully. But I understand they're out there. There are cities that have them running all over the place. I believe Austin, Texas is one location that I've heard. So, with AI moving in that direction, and then within the healthcare space. But when it comes to even, Tami, prescribing certain medication for an ailment, or just to overcome the flu, which is very common this time of year. I think I'd rather hear from somebody like Dr. Hamza.
The internet went down in my neighborhood, so there's certain things you can control, certain things you can't control.
Well, so we want to know about AI as applied through doctor. What part of the supply chain of healthcare are you deploying it into, and what kind of regulations do you see having to overcome? Please do tell us.
Yeah, and I apologize again. You're exactly right. It's supply and demand. And so, two things I think is, we're not going to spend more money in healthcare. So how do we use the money we have better? And there's more than enough doctors. It's just that 33% of their time is spent on administration work, talking like typing and billing and doing paperwork and so on. So can you use AI tools like ours, which has like an AI nurse that can call a patient ahead of time, talk in their language to the patient, onboard them, triage them, figuring out what blood tests they should do, what imaging they should do ahead of the appointment, put the notes in the chart. And then when the doctor is seeing the patient, transcribe all that information as well in real time and help with the diagnosis, reduce errors. And then even after the appointment, checking up on the patient and seeing how they're doing on their medications and so on. So the efficiency that we talk about is what's really going to help the healthcare system be able to handle the aging population and so on, and improve accuracy and accessibility as well. And then in turn, also help with reducing the demand by keeping people healthier, keeping people out of hospital, avoiding the emergencies, catching it when you really need it on a Sunday night instead of waiting until it's an emergency on Monday morning. Things like that. So it's about using the software tools that we have to help the doctors create a digital storefront, be independent practitioners, their own bosses, work whenever they want, wherever they want, and see as many patients as they want to see whenever they want to.
So going back to what you said about onboarding patients and keeping them healthier, how does the AI help keep the patients healthier? I understand the onboarding process and the
Yeah.
follow-up process, but what about the preventative aspect of that? How does AI help with that?
Yeah, so we actually have a unique proprietary tool called the Global Library of Medicine. It was created by a couple hundred doctors around the world over a period of about, I think, 7 years now, where it's not ChatGPT, it's not something that will ever hallucinate. It's always dependable. It's a system that is curated and has the ability to diagnose over 1,000 diseases and talk to patients about over 1,000 diseases and the symptoms they have and so on. And so when we talk about preventative care, the problem with healthcare right now, it's treating something after it's happening and paying doctors for after, someone has diabetes, treating their diabetes. And so if we can actually prevent that and watch the patient's sugar levels, along the way every day, check up on them, see how they're doing, see how their mental health is doing, get some feedback back and forth. Something that doctors and nurses don't have time to do right now, and the healthcare system can't afford to do. But the AI doctor, the AI nurse can definitely interact with patients 24/7. That's the way to keep people healthy and give them feedback on their nutrition, on their diet, on their their general health. If they have any questions, catching infections before it gets worse, and so on. So that's really what we're talking about in terms of preventative care.
Essam, how about acceptance from the patients? Because I would imagine it takes two. It not only takes the delivering party, the physician providing the care and the oversight, but have you seen much resistance from patients in allowing that door to open for them?
Actually, the opposite. I always talk about the 3 Ps, and you have to have buy-in from all of them. So the patient, the practitioner, and the payer. And this is the one time that I've ever seen, especially in healthcare, where you have the buy-in from everybody. The patients love accessibility, the ability to talk to somebody or something that will give them reassurance and know that they're being heard, and helping with them eventually seeing a doctor or a nurse and so on. The practitioners love it because it makes their life a lot easier and they're doing stuff they want to do in terms of seeing patients versus paperwork. And the payers love it because it creates efficiency and reducing costs and improves better access to care to patients and keeping their healthier. So it's actually the opposite. I find patients just want to be heard. They want to be able to connect. And the anxiety comes when they don't know what to do because their kid is sick on a Sunday night and their options are emergency room or just worry,
Mm-hmm. And how do you differentiate Rocket Doctor from your competitors, if there are any competitors?
Yeah, I mean, I think people think of when you talk about AI and healthcare, they think about ChatGPT and Gemini and so on. And those are LLMs, large language models. And the way they work is they scrape the internet for good or bad information, and then they spew out an answer, whether it's correct or not. And a lot of times it's not correct, and it can hallucinate and give bad advice. And so those are not what we do. Like I said, ours will never hallucinate. It'll never become racist. They'll never, make up an answer. And so that's a bit different. And this is something that they've had pushback on with the LLMs and healthcare advice. Other companies that might have these chatbots and so on are more of a kind of a unique little piece where they're only providing kind of one service. This is the first platform that I've seen where we're providing the full ecosystem for the patient, where now the patient has access to something right away, onboarding, triaging, the digital tools. We have the platform for the doctor to become their own boss and see patients whenever they want for 2 hours here or 5 hours there, and have the digital tools at their fingertips, and then the aftercare as well. And so there's the LLMs, like I mentioned. There's some other companies that are all multi-billion-dollar private companies like Doctronics and others that are providing different types of solutions. And then really at the end of the day, you're probably going to find that the governments are starting to provide more and more accessibility. You asked about kind of approvals. Utah just announced that they're allowing the AI doctor solutions to provide prescription refills for patients without any doctor or nurse access at all.
Wow.
Okay, so take it out into the future. If you were to look out in your crystal ball, where do you see AI and medicine 5 years from now?
I see personalized medicine. I see a situation where you'll never just show up in a clinic or a hospital and nobody knows why you're there. You're going to be invited to come in because you've already gone through that AI triaging. I think every government around the world will have some form of AI triaging tools to make sure that you're in the right place, you're seen the proper way, and that you're getting the advice you're getting. And there's some reporting back on how effective that is, on whether you're getting better, how satisfied are you. And so I think in the future, in the next 5-10 years, that's going to be part of every government and every state.
And doctor, what keeps you up at night?
You know what? I sleep very well now, but I would say the key thing is that this is at the very beginnings of a very big solution, and it's exciting because it's a very big opportunity. And I think at the time, like, there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't control. I'm seeing good things happening in the space, including, like I said, with Utah now announcing what they did and so on. So I think at the end of the day, just running a public company and making sure you have enough money to kind of continue growing.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor, for being on our show today. Next week, we have a guest, David Lever, Esquire, from Lever and Ecker, so clearly a founding partner of that law firm. Thank you, Jim, for joining me on the show. I hope you had a good show. I know I did, and I learned a little bit more about what you do.
Thank you, Tami.
And I think having a doctor, serial entrepreneur that told us about AI and how it's going to be not only deployed right now to make the process of being seen by a doctor more efficient, but also more delightful, is a great thing. So good luck to your company and to you. Thank you.
Thank you
For being on Money Matters. I'm Tami Fratis. I had Jim Butler and Dr. Essam Hamza. Your money matters to us. Thank you and have a great day.